"Take me, I'll be yours tonight," said girl. And Lone Rancher took her away. The late afternoon sun hung low over the dusty town, casting long, golden shadows across the wooden sidewalks and the worn rooftops. The wind whispered softly, carrying with it the faint smell of hay, leather, and the occasional smoke from a distant chimney. It was the kind of quiet that could lull anyone into thinking nothing unusual would happen here. But for the people who lived on the edge of the desert, they knew that even the calmest day could change in a moment. On the main street, a lone figure moved slowly. She was young, with dark hair that fell in gentle waves around her shoulders, and eyes that seemed to hold a mixture of fear and determination. Her clothes were dusty and worn, as if she had traveled for miles under the harsh sun, but she carried herself with a strange confidence, like someone who had faced danger before and survived. She paused outside the small saloon, her hand resting lightly on the wooden door. The sounds from inside, laughter, clinking glasses, the low hum of a piano, seemed almost foreign to her, and yet she knew she had to enter. Inside, the saloon was warm, filled with the smells of strong coffee, whiskey, and the faint tang of horses that had just been tied up outside. Men and women chatted in low tones, some playing cards, others laughing at stories from the day. She walked carefully, her boots clicking softly against the wooden floor, drawing a few curious glances. Most eyes quickly returned to their conversations, but a few lingered longer, taking in her presence based on a corner table. A man watched quietly. He was broad-shouldered and tall, with a face weathered by sun and wind and eyes that seemed to see more than most. The Lone Rancher, as he was known in the surrounding area, rarely came into town unless he needed supplies or information. He preferred the quiet of his land, the company of his own thoughts, and the steady rhythm of daily work. But today, something, or someone, caught his attention. The girl moved toward the bar, her hand brushing the edge lightly as if she were trying to steady herself. The bartender, a middle-aged man with a thick mustache, noticed her immediately. "What'll it be, miss?" he asked politely. "Just water, please," she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of exhaustion. The Lone Rancher shifted slightly in his chair, observing her from across the room. There was something unusual about her. Most strangers in town were cautious, polite, and careful not to attract attention, but she carried an aura of boldness, almost daring anyone to underestimate her. And yet there was a flicker of fear behind her eyes, something that spoke of urgency. She took her water and moved to an empty table, sitting down with her back to the wall. It was a small gesture, but it revealed a lot. She wanted to see everyone else, but she didn't want to be seen. She studied the room, noting the positions of the doors and windows, the few exits people could use. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the glass to her lips. The rancher felt a pull he couldn't explain. He wasn't usually drawn to strangers, and yet he couldn't look away. He saw the way she scanned the room, the tension in her shoulders, the quickness of her movements. Something told him she wasn't just another traveler passing through. She was running from something, or someone. After a few moments of silence, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need help," she said, glancing around to ensure no one was paying close attention. The rancher leaned back, studying her carefully. "Help?" he asked, his voice low but steady. "What kind of help?" She hesitated, biting her lower lip as if weighing her next words. Then, with a mixture of boldness and desperation, she said, "Take me! I'll be yours tonight!" The words struck the rancher like a sudden gust of wind. For a moment, he didn't move, didn't speak. He studied her face, trying to gauge whether she was serious, frightened, or playing some dangerous game.
There was no deception in her eyes, only an urgent need that seemed almost painful to witness.
He finally cleared his throat. "What do you mean by that?" he asked cautiously. Her gaze held his, unwavering. "I mean, I need somewhere safe tonight. I can't stay in town. I can't go back. Please, take me away, just for tonight. Anywhere safe." This wasn't something he usually dealt with. His life was simple, predictable, and solitary. Yet there was a part of him that recognized the truth in her plea. He had lived long enough to see fear and desperation in people's eyes, and he knew when it was genuine.
She wasn't asking for trouble. She was asking for safety.
He nodded slowly, deciding to trust his instincts.
All right,
he said finally.
You can come with me, but I need to know. Can I trust you to be honest with me? No games. No secrets that could get us both hurt.
She nodded, relief flooding her features.
I'll be honest,
she promised.
I just need to get away from here. Please.
The rancher stood, stretching his long arms.
Then we'd better leave before the sun sets completely. It's a long ride, and I don't want to be caught in the dark out there.
She followed him outside, her boots sinking slightly into the soft dirt. The wind had picked up, rustling the dry grass and carrying the faint scent of sagebrush. He led her to his horse, a strong, steady animal that had been his companion for many years. She mounted carefully, her hands gripping the reins with a mixture of nervousness and determination. The rancher swung into the saddle behind her, keeping a cautious distance at first. He didn't speak much, allowing the sound of the wind and the rhythmic pounding of hooves to fill the silence. It was only when they reached the outskirts of town that he finally asked, "Where are we going?"
I don't know yet. Anywhere. Anywhere safe. I'll tell you along the way.
The ride was long and quiet, the desert stretching endlessly around them. The sun dipped lower, turning the sky a brilliant shade of orange, and the shadows of the distant mountains grew longer. Every now and then she would glance back toward the town, and he could see the fear in her eyes, not of him, but of whoever she had left behind. Finally, they reached a small ridge overlooking the wide-open plains. The rancher stopped the horse and dismounted, holding out his hand to help her down. She took it gratefully, landing lightly on the ground.
This is a good place to rest for now, he said. We'll find somewhere safer soon, but for tonight, this will do. She nodded, taking a deep breath.
"Thank you," she whispered.
I didn't know if anyone would help me.
He shrugged, though there was a softness in his eyes.
Most people wouldn't, but sometimes the right choice is the hardest one.
You made it easy to help you by being honest. As the sun disappeared behind the distant hills, the two of them stood in silence, looking out over the vast open land. The air was cooling, carrying with it the scent of earth and grass, and the first stars began to appear in the deepening sky. For the rancher, it was a rare moment of connection in a life usually defined by solitude and routine. For the girl, it was the first breath of relief she had felt in days, maybe weeks. Together, they had found a fragile safety in each other's presence, even if the night ahead was uncertain.
Neither of them knew exactly what tomorrow would bring, but for now, they had each other, and sometimes that was enough.
The night crept closer, filling the desert with quiet shadows. Somewhere in the distance an owl hooted, and the wind carried the soft rustle of leaves and dry brush. It was a small, peaceful moment in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving, a moment that neither the rancher nor the girl would forget. And so, under the first stars of the evening, their story began, not with grand gestures or loud declarations, but with a simple act of trust and the quiet hope that, for tonight at least, they could find safety together. The night wrapped the desert in a quiet, almost heavy darkness. The stars shone bright overhead, their light reflecting off the distant ridges and the sparse vegetation that stretched endlessly in every direction. The girl and the lone rancher had stopped at a small rocky outcrop that gave them a clear view of the land. Though it was open and exposed, it offered a moment to catch their breath, and the rancher wanted to ensure she was safe before deciding their next move. She sat down carefully on a flat rock, brushing dust from her worn clothes. Her face, illuminated by the pale starlight, looked smaller, more vulnerable than it had in the town. The rancher stood nearby, keeping one hand on his horse's reins and the other lightly resting on his side, alert to any signs of danger in the surrounding darkness.
I didn't expect anyone to help me, she said softly, her voice barely audible over the gentle night wind. Most people wouldn't. The rancher didn't speak immediately.
He was studying her, trying to read more than just her words. He had spent many years alone, observing the world from a distance, and he had learned to notice the small things, the way someone held themselves, the tension in their shoulders, the flicker of hesitation in their eyes.
Maybe you just haven't met the right person yet, he said finally, his voice calm but firm.
She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. Maybe, she whispered.
Then, after a moment of silence, she asked, "Do you ever get tired of being alone out here?"
He thought about it. The rancher had lived his entire adult life on this land, taking care of the animals, fixing fences, tending crops, and riding the long stretches of open desert.
He was used to solitude, but he knew what she meant. Sometimes the quiet could feel like a weight pressing down on him.
Some days, he admitted, some days it's fine, and other days,
you wish there was someone to share it with. Someone you can trust. The girl looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and caution.
And do you trust easily? She asked.
He shook his head slowly. No.
Not easily. But when someone's life is on the line, you learn to trust quickly.
Carefully, but quickly. For a few moments they sat in silence, listening to the soft night sounds, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustle of dry leaves, the gentle neigh of the horse. The tension between them began to ease slightly, replaced by a tentative sense of connection. Finally, the girl spoke again.
I didn't tell you everything back in town. There are people... I can't explain fully, but I was being followed, and I can't go back. I don't even know where to go, but I knew you... Calm, like you could keep me safe.
The rancher nodded slowly. He had expected some explanation, but he hadn't expected her to be so honest.
You're not wrong, he said. I can protect you. But you have to do your part, too. No secrets that could put us both in danger.
She hesitated, then nodded.
I promise. I won't hide anything that matters. I don't know how to explain it all yet.
The rancher studied her for a moment, then motioned toward the horse.
We need to move soon. Staying out here too long isn't safe. Night in the desert can be quiet, but it can also hide trouble.
She climbed onto the horse carefully, her hands gripping the reins. The rancher followed, mounting behind her. The ride resumed in silence, the rhythm of the horse's hooves against the dry earth almost hypnotic. The night air was cooler now, carrying the faint scent of sage and distant pine. He kept his senses alert, scanning the horizon for any movement, any sign of danger. After a while, she spoke again, her voice hesitant but curious.
Do you always live like this? Out here? Alone?
He gave a small shrug.
Mostly. It's not bad. You get used to the quiet. You get used to your own company. But it can be lonely, too.
She glanced back at him. And you never wanted, I don't know...
More? Company?
He thought for a moment.
Sometimes. But it's rare that someone comes along who fits into a life like this.
Most people aren't ready for it. They think the desert is romantic, but it's not.
It's harsh, demanding, and unforgiving. If someone stays out here, they have to accept that.
And most people can't. The girl nodded slowly, seeming to understand more than she let on. I see, she said quietly. It's lonely in a different way than the loneliness I know.
I think I like that. The rancher allowed a small smile.
It's honest, at least. The loneliness doesn't lie.
People do. The ride continued, the path winding through rocky trails and narrow passes. The girl occasionally glanced back, as if expecting someone to appear, but the shadows held no one. She relaxed slightly, leaning forward against the horse, feeling the steady motion beneath her. It was a strange comfort, riding with someone she barely knew, yet felt safe with. Finally, after what seemed like hours under the starry sky, they arrived at a small grove of trees. It wasn't a safe house nor a town, but it offered some cover and a place to rest for a few hours. The rancher dismounted first, holding out his hand to help her down. She landed softly on the ground, dusting off her pants. "This will do for now," he said, glancing around at the trees and low bushes.
It's not perfect, but it'll keep us out of sight. We'll figure out the next step in the morning. She nodded, sitting on a fallen log.
"Thank you," she whispered again, her voice tired but sincere. "I don't even know how to thank you properly. I was scared I'd have nowhere to go." "Don't worry about thanks. Just survive the night, and that's enough for me." The silence returned, but it was softer now, almost comfortable. The girl finally allowed herself to relax a little, leaning back and looking at the stars. The rancher sat nearby, keeping watch while also letting the quiet sink in. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, the girl felt a small spark of hope. Maybe tonight, at least, she would be safe. After a while, she spoke again, more casually this time. "What's your name?" "Most people call me the rancher. That's what the town knows me as. I don't use my first name much." She gave a small laugh, a sound that was lighter than the tension of the day. "The rancher, huh? That's fitting. You do seem like someone who belongs out here." He allowed himself a small smile. "And you? Do you have a name, or do I just call you the girl?" "Clara James." "Clara," he repeated, testing the sound. "All right, Clara. Let's make sure you survive the night, and we'll see about tomorrow." The wind whispered through the trees, and the desert seemed to hold its breath. Neither of them spoke for a while, letting the peace of the night settle over them. It was a fragile peace, one that could be broken at any moment by danger or misfortune, but it was enough to allow them to breathe, to rest, and to think clearly. Hours passed, and the girl finally allowed herself to lie down, leaning against the tree trunk. She kept her eyes open for a few moments, listening to the quiet sounds of the desert, the distant cries of nocturnal animals, the faint rustle of the leaves. Then, slowly, her eyelids grew heavy, and she drifted into a light sleep. The rancher stayed awake, keeping watch. He thought about the events of the day, about the strange meeting in the saloon, and about the trust that had been placed in him. He didn't know what Clara had been running from, or who might come looking for her, but he knew one thing. He had made a choice, and now it was his responsibility to see it through. The night continued, calm but watchful. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled, and the stars shone down on two figures bound together by circumstance, trust, and the silent hope of safety. For tonight, at least, the desert was theirs, and they were not alone. And in that quiet, Clara allowed herself to hope. Morning came slowly over the desert, with soft pink and orange streaks stretching across the sky. The air was cooler than the night before, carrying the smell of dry earth and fresh dew that had settled on the sparse grass and rocks. Clara awoke first, blinking at the early sunlight filtering through the branches of the small grove. She stretched carefully, still tense from the events of the previous day, and glanced over at the rancher, who was already awake and standing near the horse, scanning the horizon with his sharp, alert eyes. "Morning," she said softly, trying not to startle him. The rancher nodded, his expression calm but serious. "Morning. You slept well?" Clara hesitated. "Better than I expected, I guess." He gave a small smile but didn't speak further. There was a lot to do before they could continue, and he wanted to make sure she understood the seriousness of their situation. They weren't completely safe yet, not while she was being followed by unknown people in town. "Come on," he said finally. "We need to keep moving. There's a small creek a few miles from here. We can get water, rest the horse, and figure out our next steps." She felt a strange mix of exhaustion and nervous excitement. The night had been tense, but it had also been the first time she had felt someone truly protect her. There was trust forming slowly between them. though she didn't say it out loud. The rancher mounted first, then helped her onto the horse. The rhythm of their ride was familiar now, but there was a new awareness in the way they moved together. They didn't speak much at first, letting the sounds of the desert, distant birds, the rustle of leaves, the soft clatter of hooves fill the space. After a while, Clara spoke, her voice hesitant. I didn't tell you everything last night.
I should have, but I didn't know if I could trust anyone.
The rancher glanced at her briefly, giving her his attention.
You can trust me now, but I need you to be honest from here on.
She nodded. I promise.
I'm afraid. Afraid they'll find me or that they'll hurt someone if they do. That's why I needed to get away. That's why I came to you.
He studied her for a moment, noting the fear in her eyes. You've done the right thing.
It's not easy to trust a stranger, especially when danger is close. But you made the right choice.
The journey continued, the land opening up into a wide, flat plain. The creek appeared in the distance, a thin line of shimmering water reflecting the early morning light. The rancher guided the horse carefully toward it, and Clara felt a small relief, knowing they were approaching a safer place to rest and refresh. At the creek, the rancher helped her dismount.
Clara knelt by the water, cupping it in her hands and drinking quickly.
The water was cool and refreshing, washing away some of the tension and exhaustion she had carried since leaving town. The rancher did the same, keeping a careful eye on the surroundings as he drank.
This will be a good spot to rest for a few hours, he said. The horse needs water and a break, too.
She watched the way the rancher moved, the way he handled the horse with care and patience. It was clear he had spent his life in the desert, learning how to survive, how to protect himself, and how to respect the land. There was strength in him, but also a quiet kindness that she hadn't expected. After a short while, she finally asked, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," he replied, not taking his eyes off the horizon.
Why do you live out here, alone? Most people wouldn't choose this life.
He paused, considering how much to reveal.
I like the quiet, the work, the land. It's honest. You see what you do, and it matters. You can't hide from yourself out here. But it's lonely, too.
Sometimes I wish I had someone to share it with, someone I could trust completely.
That doesn't happen often.
Clara considered his words.
I think I understand. I've lived in cities, surrounded by people, and I've never felt so alone.
But being alone doesn't always mean being lonely. Sometimes it's peaceful.
Honest.
Exactly. The land doesn't lie.
People do. Out here, you can't hide. You learn fast who to trust.
Clara looked down at the water, her thoughts heavy.
I wish I'd met you sooner. I wouldn't have had to run so far.
He was thinking about what she had said and about the dangers that might still follow her.
It doesn't matter when we met,
he said finally.
What matters is that we're here now. We'll deal with the rest as it comes.
The horse rested and grazed, the sun climbed higher, and the heat of the day began to settle in. Clara and the rancher shared a simple meal. Quietly, without much conversation, there was an unspoken understanding between them. They needed each other to survive this journey. Eventually, Clara spoke again, her voice softer now.
I don't know what's coming next. I don't know if they're still following me or what they want. I just know I couldn't go back.
The rancher placed a hand on her shoulder briefly, a gesture of reassurance.
Whatever happens, we'll face it together. But you have to promise me one thing. No matter what, you stay calm and trust your instincts. Fear can make people do things they'll regret. She nodded, feeling a small spark of courage. I promise. By mid-afternoon, they decided it was time to move again. The creek provided temporary safety, but staying too long in one place would make it easier for anyone tracking her to find them.
The rancher led the horse along a narrow, winding path through the desert, moving carefully to avoid leaving obvious tracks. Clara followed his lead, trusting his experience even though she felt the tension growing in her chest. As they traveled, Clara finally began to share more of her story. "I didn't know who to turn to," she said quietly.
The people I left, they weren't bad, but they didn't understand.
I tried to handle things on my own, but it got worse. I didn't think anyone would help me.
That's why I went to the saloon.
I didn't know if anyone would care." The rancher listened without interrupting, his expression thoughtful.
You made the right choice. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. It takes courage. And you showed that courage today.
Clara glanced at him, a faint smile breaking through her tension. "Thank you."
I think I'm beginning to believe that maybe not everyone out here is harsh or uncaring. Maybe there are people like you, people who are strong and kind at the same time. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. There are. Not many, but they exist. And sometimes when the world seems against you, you find them in the strangest places. The journey continued into the late afternoon. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert. Clara felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief. She had been running for so long, and yet, for the first time in days, she felt a small sense of security. The rancher was quiet, focused, but she could sense that he was aware of every detail around them, every movement, every sound, every sign of potential danger. Finally, they reached a small ridge that overlooked a dense grove of trees in the distance. "That's where we'll rest tonight," the rancher said. "It's not perfect, but it will provide cover and a place to regroup. We'll plan our next move in the morning." Clara dismounted, grateful to stretch her legs. She felt the cool evening breeze against her face, and for the first time in a long while she allowed herself to feel hope. "It feels safe here," she said quietly. The rancher glanced around, scanning the area for any signs of danger. "Safe enough for tonight," he said. "Tomorrow we'll see about the rest." As they settled in, Clara began to feel the weight of her journey lifting slightly. She trusted the rancher and she trusted the land around them. For the first time in what felt like forever, she could breathe without constant fear pressing down on her chest. The night approached, and the stars began to emerge, casting their gentle light over the desert. The wind rustled through the leaves, and the sounds of nocturnal animals filled the air. Clara sat quietly by the fire the rancher built, feeling a small sense of calm settle over her. For the rancher, watching her relax, there was a quiet satisfaction. He had chosen to help her, and despite the risks, he felt that it was the right thing. He knew the night ahead might bring challenges, but he also knew that together they were stronger. And so, under the slowly darkening sky, Clara and the rancher prepared to rest. Their bond, built on trust, courage, and shared danger, was growing stronger, and the desert around them seemed, for a brief moment, to offer peace. Tonight, at least, they would be safe. And that was enough. The night was quiet at first, with only the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional call of an owl breaking the stillness. Clara lay near the small fire the rancher had built, trying to rest after the long day of riding and talking. Her body ached from hours on the horse, and her mind was still heavy with worry. She knew the danger that had followed her from the town was not gone. She could feel it, like a shadow hovering at the edges of her thoughts. The rancher sat nearby, scanning the darkness around them. He had built the fire carefully in a small hollow between rocks, keeping it low enough to avoid attracting attention, but high enough to provide warmth. He listened to every sound, every shift of the wind, every distant noise that might hint at someone approaching. His instincts, sharpened by years alone in the desert, were telling him that trouble might come tonight. Hours passed and the shadows deepened. Clara drifted in and out of a restless sleep, the firelight flickering across her tired face. Then, suddenly, she woke fully. She had heard something. Footsteps, faint and deliberate, moving through the trees. She froze, her heart pounding, and the memory of being followed in town rushed back.
The rancher noticed immediately.
Clara, he said quietly, holding up a hand. Stay calm and stay low. Don't make a sound.
She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. She pressed herself closer to the ground behind a large rock that provided some cover. The rancher moved silently to a better position, his hand resting on the hilt of a small, well-worn knife at his side. He scanned the darkness, noting the faint shapes moving among the trees.
Someone's coming, he whispered.
Stay quiet. The footsteps grew louder, and Clara could see the shadows of at least 2 people moving cautiously toward the firelight. Panic rose in her chest, but she forced herself to remain still.
She trusted the rancher. He had saved her once, and she knew he would protect her again. The intruders stopped a few yards from the fire, speaking in low voices.
Clara could barely hear them, but their tone was unmistakably suspicious. They were searching for something, or someone. Her stomach twisted with fear, but she reminded herself that she was not alone. The rancher moved carefully, keeping to the shadows. He crept closer to the edge of the firelight, his eyes locked on the intruders. He noted their movements, their weapons, their hesitation. He realized quickly that they were not highly skilled, but they were determined, and that made them dangerous. He returned to Clara's side briefly, whispering,
We'll handle this. You need to stay hidden no matter what.
She nodded, gripping the rock with white-knuckled hands. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her body, sharpening her senses. The night that had felt peaceful only moments ago now held a tension so sharp it made her chest ache. The rancher watched the intruders carefully. They were moving closer to the fire, trying to spot him or Clara. He waited for the right moment, then quietly gathered some small rocks and tossed them in a different direction. The sound of the clatter drew the intruders' attention, and they paused, looking toward the noise. Now, the rancher whispered, and he moved quickly, silently, to a position behind the nearest intruder. With a swift, controlled motion, he grabbed the man and pushed him to the ground, immobilizing him before he could make a sound. The second intruder, startled, drew his weapon, but the rancher was faster. He disarmed the man and held him at knife point, his eyes cold and focused. Clara watched, her heart racing as the rancher handled the situation with calm precision. She had never seen anyone move so confidently, so purposefully. Her fear began to shift into admiration mixed with relief. He was protecting her, just as he had promised. After a tense moment, the intruders realized they were outmatched. The rancher kept them pinned until they finally surrendered, their will broken by his steady control and quiet authority. He tied their hands using strips of cloth from his bag, ensuring they could not follow or cause more trouble tonight. Clara stepped forward cautiously.
Are they okay?
She asked, her voice trembling slightly. The rancher shook his head.
They'll live, but they'll think twice before coming back here. That's all that matters for now. Let's focus on keeping ourselves safe.
Her pulse began to slow as she realized they were truly safe for the moment. She looked at him, gratitude and awe mingling in her eyes.
I don't know what I'd do without you, she admitted quietly.
He glanced at her briefly, giving a small, almost imperceptible nod. You did your part too. You stayed calm.
You listened. That matters.
The rest of the night passed without further incident, though both remained vigilant. The rancher kept the fire low and continued to scan the darkness periodically, ensuring no more threats approached. Clara stayed close, listening to his instructions and learning, in a small way, how to remain alert without panic.
As the hours wore on, the tension slowly eased.
The stars shone brightly overhead, their light reflecting off the desert in a silver glow. Clara realized how fortunate she had been to find the rancher and how crucial trust was in situations like this. She thought about the town, about the dangers she had fled, and about the path that had led her here. It was a strange feeling to be alive and safe after so many moments of fear. Finally, as dawn approached, the rancher allowed himself to relax slightly. He kept a watchful eye on the horizon, but he no longer felt the immediate danger pressing in. Clara, too, felt a sense of relief, though she knew this journey was far from over. She sat by the fire, warming her hands, and looked at the rancher with a new understanding. "You're amazing," she said softly. "I've never seen anyone so calm under pressure."
You just handle everything without panic.
It's incredible." He gave a small wry smile. "You get to used to it.
When you've spent as much time alone in the desert as I have, you learn to expect trouble and to deal with it quietly. But you stayed brave tonight."
"Don't forget that!" Clara nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and humility. She realized that she had grown stronger too by facing danger alongside someone she trusted. She felt a bond forming between them, built on shared experience and mutual respect. After a brief breakfast, they prepared to continue their journey. The intruders had been left far enough behind that they were unlikely to follow immediately. But the rancher remained cautious.
"We need to move," he said. "There's more land ahead where we can hide and rest safely during the day."
"The desert is wide, but danger travels faster than we do sometimes. We can't stay in one place too long." Clara mounted the horse again, feeling the rhythm of the ride beneath her. She glanced at the rancher, who followed behind, keeping a careful distance. The desert stretched endlessly before them, vast and quiet, but she no longer felt the same fear that had plagued her the previous days. She knew now that with him by her side, she could face challenges she had never imagined surviving on her own.
As they traveled, Clara finally began to speak more about her past. "I didn't tell you everything in town," she admitted.
"The people I left, they weren't bad, but they didn't understand me."
"I tried to explain, and it only made things worse. I didn't want to get anyone hurt, so I ran."
"I didn't know who else could help me."
The rancher listened, silent and patient.
"You did the right thing. Running doesn't mean giving up. It means you're smart enough to survive, and now you're here. That's what matters."
The words comforted her more than she expected. She felt a weight lift slightly, knowing she wasn't alone, and that someone cared enough to protect her, even when the situation was dangerous. The sun climbed higher and the heat of the day settled over the desert. The rancher led them to a hidden canyon, shaded and protected, where they could rest without being seen. Clara dismounted, feeling the relief of safety wash over her once more. She looked at him, a mix of gratitude and admiration shining in her eyes. "You really do know what you're doing," she said softly. He gave a small smile.
"Experience!"
"And paying attention. That's all."
"You've learned a little today, too. Don't forget it."
As they settled for the day, Clara reflected on how much she had grown in just a short time. She had faced fear, relied on someone else, and survived.
She felt stronger, braver, and more alive than she had in weeks, and she knew, deep down, that the journey was far from over.
There would be more challenges, more danger, and more tests of trust. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of peace, knowing that together they could face whatever came next.
The rancher kept watch as the sun climbed higher, and Clara rested, feeling a sense of security she hadn't felt in a long time. The desert was vast, harsh, and unforgiving, but with someone to trust, it could also be a place of hope. And in that quiet canyon, as the wind whispered through the rocks and trees, Clara and the rancher prepared for whatever lay ahead, bound together by courage, trust, and the unspoken promise that they would face the coming challenges together. The sun rose slowly over the desert, painting the sky with shades of pink, gold, and soft purple. Clara stirred awake, feeling the warmth of the morning sun on her face and the steady presence of the rancher nearby. Last night had been tense, but today promised a sense of calm, a chance to rest and plan their next steps. She stretched carefully, her body still sore from the long rides and the confrontation with the intruders, but her spirit felt stronger than ever. The rancher was already up, checking the horizon for any signs of trouble. He had never let his guard down, even for a moment, but the morning brought a sense of relief. The desert was quiet, and the canyon offered natural cover, keeping them hidden from anyone who might be following. "You rested?" he asked, his voice calm but firm.
Clara nodded. "I did. Better than I expected. I I feel more ready now.
He gave a small approving nod.
Good. That's what you need. Strength for what comes next.
They had decided that today they would ride to a safer area further away from the town where Clara could start to recover fully and think about what to do next. The journey would be long, but with the rancher leading, she felt a cautious optimism. As they mounted their horses, Clara looked around at the canyon, taking in the beauty of the morning light. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of hope. The desert, harsh and unforgiving, had a quiet majesty that she had never appreciated before. And now, with someone to protect her and guide her, it felt less lonely, less frightening. The ride was steady, the horses moving carefully along the narrow paths. Clara kept her eyes on the horizon, but she also noticed the little details. The way the light danced on the rocks, the distant cry of a hawk, the soft rustle of the wind through the scrub. She realized how much she had missed noticing the small, beautiful things around her while she had been running, afraid and tense. After a few hours, they reached a wide plain dotted with clusters of trees and a small stream. It was perfect for resting during the day, hidden enough to avoid being seen from a distance. The rancher led the horses to the water, allowing them to drink and graze. Clara dismounted, feeling the solid ground beneath her feet and the gentle warmth of the sun.
This will do for today,
the rancher said.
We'll rest here, eat, and think about the next move. The town is far behind us now, and the danger is less immediate, but we must stay cautious.
Clara nodded, sitting by the stream and letting the cool water flow over her hands. She thought about the journey so far, how much had happened in just a short time, how many moments of fear and uncertainty she had faced, and how much trust had grown between her and the rancher. She realized that the bond they had formed was more than just necessity. It was a connection built on courage, respect, and shared experience.
"You know," she said softly, looking up at him, "I never expected to meet someone like you."
Someone who would help me without asking for anything in return, who would risk their own safety. I don't know how to thank you properly. The rancher looked at her, his expression calm, yet there was a hint of warmth in his eyes. You don't need to thank me, he said. What matters is that you're alive and safe. That's enough. She smiled faintly, feeling a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something that she hadn't allowed herself to recognize until now. It's more than enough, she said quietly. As the day went on, they shared a simple meal, sitting by the stream and letting the calm of the desert surround them. Clara felt a sense of peace, the kind that had been missing from her life for so long. She realized how much she had grown, how much she had learned about herself and about trust. She no longer felt like a frightened, helpless girl running from danger. She felt like someone who could face the world with courage and resilience. The rancher, too, reflected on the journey. He had lived his life in solitude, expecting little from anyone and trusting even less. But Clara had changed that. Her presence, her courage, and her honesty had reminded him that life was not meant to be lived alone entirely. He had found a companion, someone who could understand the harshness of the land and the quiet strength required to survive in it. As the afternoon light began to soften, they prepared to continue. Clara mounted her horse, feeling steadier and more confident. The rancher followed, and they moved together across the plain, the wind carrying a sense of freedom and possibility. At a ridge overlooking the distant valley, the rancher stopped.
From here you can see how far we've come, he said. The town, the canyon, the creek. We've put distance between you and danger.
It's not over yet, but we've taken the first big steps. Clara looked back, the town a small blur on the horizon. She felt a mixture of relief and accomplishment.
It feels unreal, she said softly. I never thought I could escape all of that.
And now I feel like I can finally breathe. He gave a small smile. You can. And soon, you'll be able to plan the future without fear clouding your mind.
That's the goal. The rest of the day passed with careful riding and occasional stops to rest and water the horses. Clara noticed how the rancher moved with ease and confidence, guiding her, protecting her, and keeping them both safe. She realized that this journey had been more than just a physical escape. It had been a journey of trust, courage, and understanding. She had learned to rely on someone else to share her fears and hopes, and to find strength in connection. As evening approached, they found a small, secluded valley with a gentle stream and tall grass for cover. The rancher set up a small camp, and Clara helped with the fire and preparations. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and the air cooled gently. Clara felt a sense of completion, a sense that the worst was behind them. They sat by the fire, sharing a quiet meal. Clara looked at the rancher, feeling a mixture of admiration and gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you," she said.
You didn't just protect me, you helped me find myself again. You reminded me that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about facing fear with someone you trust."
He nodded, his expression calm but thoughtful.
You were brave too, Clara. Don't forget that. Facing danger, staying calm, trusting someone, it's not easy. You did all of that, and that's why we made it this far.
For a long while they sat in silence, listening to the sounds of the valley. The rustle of grass, the distant call of a bird, the soft ripple of the stream. The desert, harsh and unforgiving as it could be, felt peaceful now. They had survived together, and that was something neither of them would forget. As night fell, the stars appeared bright and clear in the desert sky. Clara felt a deep sense of relief and hope. She knew her journey was not completely over. There would always be challenges ahead, but she also knew that she had found someone she could trust. Someone who would be by her side when she needed it most.
The rancher watched the horizon, thinking about the path that had brought them here.
He had chosen to help her, and it had been the right decision. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and fear, but together they had overcome it. He realized that life was richer when shared, even in the harshest of places, and he felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that Clara was safe. As they settled for the night, Clara finally allowed herself to relax completely. She leaned back against a rock, looking at the stars, feeling a sense of peace she had not known in a long time. The rancher tended the fire, keeping watch, but he too felt the satisfaction of a day survived, a journey begun, and a bond formed.
Clara whispered softly, almost to herself. Thank you for everything.
The rancher glanced at her briefly and gave a small nod.
You're welcome. But remember, the courage was yours. I just helped guide it. And in the quiet desert night, with the stars shining above and the gentle sound of the stream beside them, Clara and the rancher rested, knowing that they had faced danger, built trust, and survived.
The desert was vast, unforgiving, and unpredictable, but they had found safety, companionship, and hope. Tonight, the past felt far away, and tomorrow promised the chance for a new beginning. Clara knew she could face the future, not alone, but with someone she trusted, someone who had shown her that courage, honesty, and connection were stronger than fear. And for the first time in a long while, both Clara and the rancher allowed themselves to believe that no matter what came next, they would face it together.